All right, let's go ahead and talk about question number 3 here. If you take a look, question number 3 talks about the role of fathers in Greek mythology. It says, the role of fathers in Greek mythology is often a significant theme. Using the stories of Uranus and Kronos, Kronos and Zeus, and at least one other story of your choice, explain how the Greeks consistently examined the archetype of fatherhood. So let's go ahead, and we know that you all read that archetype handout that I gave you. So the first thing you probably want to go through is go through and review what an archetype is. You've got that handout. There's some videos that you could look on YouTube if you're curious to learn more about it. But review archetype first, just in your head. Then the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go through and review the stories of Uranus plus Kronos. And then you're going to want to check out, Kronos, the story of Kronos and Zeus. And then one additional. And you're going to want to look at how those stories all influence or discuss the Greek view, the Greek idea of fatherhood. So I'm going to give you the one additional, and the one idea of Greek fatherhood. I'm going to give you a little bit of a lead here. One idea, there's lots of ideas that you could use because almost every Greek story that we've read somehow dabbles with notions of fatherhood. But one that really stands out here is the Oedipus story, and how Oedipus ends up inadvertently killing his father. And so let's take a moment to talk about this. The notion of fatherhood and the archetype of fatherhood is an interesting one that a lot of psychoanalysts and psychotherapists have continued to play with today. Freud being one of the early psychoanalysts who is interested in this archetype of fatherhood. And why they're interested in the archetype of fatherhood is because every young man, as he comes to age, in a metaphorical sense, must kill his father, as Oedipus does, in order to become independent. In order to gain autonomy, a young man, an adolescent man, has to separate himself from his parents and go out and venture into the world on his own and to find his own autonomy. And so the story of Oedipus obviously draws us out in really stark clarity when Oedipus accidentally kills his father at the crossroads, not knowing that it's his real biological father, while, ironically, running away from the prophecy that he's going to kill his father, who he believes is his father, but who's actually a stepfather, an adopted father. And on that attempt to not kill his father, he still ends up killing his father. So it's kind of talking about the notion of the fact that this is archetypal. It's a common human experience that we must separate ourselves from our parental influences to gain adult autonomy. So I'm kind of feeding you some of this archetypal stuff along with the Greek idea of fatherhood, all this stuff. And we see this obviously in these earlier stories also. But another piece of the puzzle here is that looking back at the Greek civilization, why did this come about? Well, the Greeks were more or less a patriarchal, pseudo-feudal, land-owning, agrarian society. And so what this means is that in most cases, the Greeks would pass on all of their wealth to their oldest son. And when I say wealth, that would be flocks, that would be land, that would be potentially ships, whatever they had that was of value. And so there's always this crux. I'm sure people, if you think about people today that you know, or possibly even your own family, there's a struggle for when a father and a son continue to work together. Eventually, as that father ages and the son grows up, somewhere in his 20s or 30s, the son's going to want to do things different. He's not going to necessarily want to go about approaching problems the same way as his father has in the past. And if there's any kind of wealth that's getting handed down to the son's going to be eager for that control or that influence as he sees new ways to solve problems in the family business or a family farm or something like that. And so we can see this continued today. Thousands of years ago, the Greeks saw this, and we still see this playing into our world today. And it's not saying that sons actually really want to kill their father, but it's talking about the autonomy that young sons need to, or adolescent and sons who are growing and maturing into full adult men need to have that kind of that autonomy in order to assert their own power in life. Now, in the Greeks' case, sometimes this might actually have led to fratricide. We don't really know, and that probably wasn't all that common, but that's where they draw it out in the stories, and they make the stories even more extreme than real life so that we can understand the archetype of fatherhood. And a good archetype, as we know, an archetype is this universal human experience that transcends both time and culture, and we can still see elements of this idea in our society today. So that's question 3.